Aloha! Welcome to another Mama Presents. You know, the Maui Arts and Music Association is part of the Dream Makers Foundation, which has Maui Arts and Music Association, Mama, and People Aligned in Positive Action, Papa, Mama and Papa. That's an integrated, planned future where we encourage and warm the family, and Papa's out forging, and we create the foundation for dreams to happen. Not by making them happen, but by working with people to have them happen. And in this 20-year journey, it's been rare that I've met someone who was walking a similar path in that vision and had a totally different kind of life than me. You know, sometimes you see a picture and you say, whoa, isn't that so much like this? And that this is me. I've got these couple of drawings, and I then saw what happened here with Jesse. This is Jesse Christian. Say aloha. See all those guys? Those are my friends and family, and all our friends and family. Because we have been doing television shows for 20 years and talking about self-sustainability, and we've been talking about balance and just a different, I like to say, a different paradigm. You've been living a different paradigm, and we came to lots of similar, I wouldn't say conclusions, it's similar paths where there's something really special happening. So that's why she's here.
I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was born to an LDS family.
LDS, to those of you that don't know what that means, Latter-day Saints Mormon, right?
Mormon, yes.
Mormon. Okay.
Yeah, nickname Mormon. So
it's a nickname?
yeah, we all come into this world, in a certain construct, and I was born in the Mormon construct, and it was actually fifth generation on all four sides of my family. So wow. It was hard for me to get away from that Mormon upbringing, and so I was raised with a Mormon tradition. I was taught the Mormon belief system, and with any religion there's pros and cons, and I embrace a lot of the virtues of the Mormon religion. There are some amazing things that I learned in Mormonism, actually.
Is it very different than Christianity? Very different? Is it very different? Because Jesus is still the focus, right?
Yeah. Well, basically, for those that don't know really much about Mormonism, is Joseph Smith was a prophet, and he claimed to have found these golden plates that he translated as the history of the Native Americans on this continent, and that was what I was taught growing up, and that he restored what he called the primitive church, which was the Christian church as it was when Jesus established it. Mm-hmm. And so, this is kind of the line that they tell you when, the missionaries come to your door and they want to teach you about Mormonism. They knock on your door and say, hi, we're Mormons and we'd like to teach you about the Mormon religion. Yeah. And they tell you that Joseph Smith wanted to join a church, and he was told by an angelic visitor that he was to join no religions, that all of them had apostatized, that all the Christian religions had actually fallen away or apostatized from the true religion. And so it was his calling or message that he was to restore or establish a new church, which he then named the Latter-day Saint or LDS Church. And it got to be nicknamed Mormon because the angelic visitor's name was Angel Moroni, who got these records from Mormon.
Wow, you know all the good stuff.
Well, of course. This is what I was raised.
Here you are, in the middle of Mormonism.
Yes.
And you grew up and you were a young woman. You got married?
I did, yes.
And
I kind of left my Mormon background. I started actually questioning a lot about the validity of Mormonism into high school, when I started, finding some of the facts about it. And so I kind of left Mormonism and got into a more Eastern religious path. I started doing yoga and TM and
Transcendental meditation.
Yeah,
There's only 3 of you that didn't know. That's pretty good.
There you go. So, and it really helped me to get a little bit more grounding into some spiritual, more awareness, getting more in touch with God and the divine as a direct connection with the divine, and that really helped me to navigate really some of the turbulent waters.
Were you married at the time? No.
Actually, I was. This was actually when I was pregnant with my first daughter. She's 34 right now.
In your teens?
Yeah, well, I was 21.
Okay.
I was 21 when I started doing
You'll
yoga.
only be 39 now. You're looking so young.
Oh,
How old do you think this girl is? Looks like a young girl. She is a young girl.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So women
never tell their
21.
age either.
Well, you also don't show your age, so that's.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. But your wisdom comes through in what I keep seeing. So there you are, 21, going through changes, looking at TM, exploring yoga, kind of reaching out a little bit, inside a very confined, it seems, a very confined and restricted society, and I don't want to say moral practice, because some people would say, well, wait a minute. Christians, moral practice? Don't they have many wives? All of them have many wives? And that's a whole...
Well, we can go into that if you'd like.
You had one husband.
Yes.
Who had more than one wife.
Yes, eventually we got into FLDS, which is fundamental Mormonism, which they still embrace the idea that Joseph Smith taught, that men should have more than one wife in order to gain the celestial kingdom, to be able to reach that highest kingdom in heaven. So
I'm going to put a hole in that one myself. How can celestial kingdom be based on physical beings? More physical beings gives you more place in celestial kingdom? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's one of the principles. Sure. It's one of the principles that Joseph Smith taught, in some of the Mormon doctrines. But these were, like I said, these were fundamental principles of Mormon doctrines, and the modern day church has left off some of these fundamental principles because they don't practice polygamy or united order or any of those teachings that Joseph Smith restored as part of the primitive church, which was, an interesting dialogue, actually, if you want to go into that. But
no, here's what I'm looking to do.
Okay.
I'm touching on this to go somewhere. I'm not worried about the Mormons. I mean, I can pick on them a little bit. Or try, I put a hole in them, but that wasn't my intention. My intention is to talk about, you were in a Mormon marriage,
right,
and you were one of a number of wives, and you started to get kids, and you were breaking out of a mold, and something happened, and then that's where I was going to jump from.
Well, yeah.
So to give you a platform to jump from. Because I explained up front that you and I lived very different lives, and yet here we are coming up and seeing the same vision, like first encounter of the third kind? Steven Spielberg, you'll have to correct me. Third encounter of the...
Some kind.
It was something with kind. Someone was kind.
Well, that sounds like my relationship. I call it the close encounters of the weird kind.
Oh.
Because we ended up, you make a long story short, and this is actually in my first book, Heart Song, is kind of my history of my Mormon, journey. We actually lived off the grid.
This was as multiple wives?
Yes. And this is all in my book, Heart Song, my first book, Heart Song.
That's got to be a different experience.
It was very different. It was very expansive. I mean, I can't deny some of the benefits that I got from it. I mean, like I said, everything has its pros and cons. I had a lot of children. At the time that Christy joined me in my polygamous relationship, we were living off the grid. She's the second wife. She was the second wife. We call them wives. She was my sister wife, so she was the second wife. And she joined us in a place we called Higher Ground, which was 640 acres that were off the grid up in Montana. And we were you know, we were clear back in the national forest. I mean, our closest neighbor was 2.5 miles away. So we didn't have electricity, we didn't have telephone, we did have a water system. So we were pretty rustic. And by that time I had 7 children. So I was basically barefoot and pregnant in the backwoods of Montana.
And maybe 30?
Yeah.
So you had
35.
When did you get your second wife? Somewhere along
yeah, about 35. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I was about 35, and she was quite young. She was like 21, and she had a son that she had from another relationship. So, you know, we had been investigating, you know, the fundamentalist Mormon religion, and I actually lived in a community called Pinesdale for about 7 years up until that time. So I got kind of a taste of community living in a polygamous community called Pinesdale. It was quite a large
self-sustainability in, I want to say not a primitive form, but you wouldn't say, would you say you lived primitively, or did you live differently?
Well, in Pinesdale, it was a beautiful community model because they had a gathered school, and I worked at the school. I actually was a yoga and PE teacher there and did art classes there. At a gathered school, they had a gathered garden. They had about 200 to 300 people that lived there in Pinesdale, and it was a beautiful community environment.
Is it still?
Yes, it's there. Yes, it's up there in Pinesdale, Montana. And I actually buried one of my sons there on their property. I lost a son due to the consequences of whooping cough. He actually didn't die of whooping cough. Actually, he got a staph infection in the hospital, and that again is another story.
Okay, we're exploring things. Although I'm happy to share about this.
Yes.
What I'm looking to share about is from a totally different place. Me, or probably many of our viewers, you know, lived a different kind of a life. And out of this, something happened in you that made you want to leave.
Exactly.
And now, you guys don't know yet, except if you know, this is Janae Thornburg. And you also know that this is a lady who has gone through so many things that she's going to get into some of them. She's written a number of books.
Yes.
Give us a couple of titles, just so these guys can start looking.
Yeah. And they're available on my website as well.
Okay. What's your website?
holyvortexfoundation.net.
holyvortexfoundation.net. That'll be a story I'll tell later. Okay. And on the website, what kind of books?
Well, Heart Song, like I mentioned, is the story kind of, it's kind of a fictional, I call it a fantasy of how I see community actually working, where it's egalitarian, where, you know, we can have multiple partners, but it's across the board that women as well as men get to embrace the concept of what I call polyamory, which is kind of a new age concept, but I like that. Or polyfidelity is also a really great catchword, which is, you know, we have other partners, but we are faithful to those partners. And so it's a very expansive lifestyle choice. And so it's kind of a
We've
vision.
had a couple of different people on the show that have explored these subjects, so I imagine many of our viewers are open and understanding more than you may think, and understand that that we in the Western Christian world, with single partner, whatever, we make things illegal and things still happen, and then society gets this whole drama around multiple partners and all kinds of vicious hatred and weirdness between people because of things like sex, because of things like intimacy of relationship that even isn't even sex. You know, so there's a lot of growth, and we have an audience that's been growing out here, right? You guys are growing. We have some interesting subjects. So,
well, a little bit to add to that. You know, there's been a lot of TV shows that's kind of introducing people to the Mormon concept of polygamy, like Big Love, which is, if you want to know, that was my story, really. I mean, it is. It's so true to life, true to form as far as how I live my life. It's big love. And then Sister Wives, actually.
Sister Wives?
Sister Wives.
Are these movies or
no,
series?
actually, this is a sitcom. No, this is a reality show. Yeah, a lot of you may know about Sister Wives. It's a reality show, and actually Cody Brown is Christy Brown, my second wife, or Kurt's second wife, my sister wife's brother. And he actually is fighting a legal battle because they wanted to come after him, which is really a turn of events. The state of Utah was going to come after him and charge him with bigamy, because he went public with his lifestyle of having, I think he's got 4 or 5 wives, and I know all the wives. They're wonderful, beautiful people. So he's actually filed a lawsuit against the state of Utah, a civil lawsuit to fight the right for people to have multiple partners if that's their choice. And I'm all for, pro-choice as far as, partnering, and, these are our bodies, and we should be able to determine what we do, with consenting adults. So.
And when I hear that, I always go back to that thing about sex, because what consulting adults, that becomes a social and moral issue instead of another more personal issue of why can't people all cooperate. We somehow get lost on this. Sometimes you hear it broken into, I'm sure you may too, first dynamic, second dynamic. First is self, second is you and a partner, and then there's a family unit, or that's a group, and then there's mankind. So somehow we get stuck on rules and regulations in the personal, and forget that there's a larger and more significant self-sustainability than just in an intimate twosome. It can be very, very unbalancing, which is the way the Western civilization, and I guess some of the Eastern civilization, have set their models up, which is why we have these kind of funny shows, huh? Yeah. Because we're trying to look at what works and what is, and try to bring, at least I do, I know it, I can hear it from your heart, peace into the world, cooperation.
I call it community.
Yeah.
Yes, we call it community.
So Heart Song,
which is coming into unity by living in community, which is kind of the bylaw to my.
That's nice. Coming into unity by living in
community. And community is everywhere. I mean, it's everyone and everyone and everywhere that we look is community, and it's whether or not we want to engage in community on all levels. We're talking, we can go into the chakra levels or tantra, which is really what tantra is about. But I'd like to kind of go back to, we were talking about my books. Heart Wide Open is really a book of me attempting to live in a polyamorous community after I left my polygamous relationship, because I fought for my rights as a woman to engage in other relationships, and wanted, I basically sent the other 2 wives away, and we tried to heal some of the issues that were coming up for me in not having the same or equal rights as my husband. And so I ended up leaving my relationship with him, and actually my 10 children I left behind. And the second wife, Christy, ended up raising them. And it was a really tough choice, but I did.
10 children.
Yes.
Now, that's either a very wealthy family, or you lived and learned to value different things than money and things. Exactly.
And, it was a great lifestyle for these children. We were in the back of the woods. We were pretty sustainable. We had, goats and chickens, and grew a huge garden. And, I considered my children as great helpers. They went out and gathered eggs and milked goats. I mean, my 2 daughters, they brag, they're the best goat milkers around, They are. They used to have to go out and milk them.
Did you teach them at home?
Yes, and I homeschooled them. Part of our belief system is that the public schools have been corrupted, and the healthcare system has been corrupted, and we didn't want to expose our children to that type of corruption. And so
Corrupted in what way?
well, that a lot of huge corporations are really running the curriculums of the school system, as well as in the healthcare. You know, the
So you just didn't want to be supportive of that?
yeah, we didn't.
Okay.
I actually had my kids at home. I home birthed my children, so we kind of avoided, you know, going the modern medical route. And I learned to be an herbalist. I practiced under Dr. Christopher and got my master herbalist under him, and we eventually wrote some books. My ex-husband Kurt was a teacher there, and my first book I wrote actually was Herbs to the Rescue, which was done as a commissioned work for Dr. Christopher's School of Natural Healing. And I also wrote a book, Thank You Mother Nature, which is kind of a handbook for home birth. So we did a lot of work with the School of Natural Healing.
Prolific all over the map.
God, I know. Yeah, I've been really busy. I have a busy life.
And you had another one about Buffalo Woman.
Well, yeah, well, let me talk about, so the second book, Heart Wide Open, which on the cover is me nude, because I'm a naturist. I embrace naturism, and it's actually a depiction of me in a vision quest that I had on top of higher ground, where I got some very profound answers. And, you know, I do embrace a lot of shamanic practices. You know, go out. I invite all of you to go out and do vision questing. You know, if you want to go directly to God, you know, create a sacred circle on top of a mountain, fast and pray, and you'll get your answers. You know, God hears you, and God will answer you. And so, and that vision is part of the first part of both of my books. I talk about my vision quest up there on higher ground, which I left, unfortunately. And so Heart Wide Open is really about some of the experiences, good and bad, of living in a polyamorous community in Utah. And a lot of the people were ex-Mormons that really, you know, gotten past the whole Mormon doctrine, but believed that there were certain principles that were potent. You know, I call them correct principles. And I really do think in community, we expand ourselves in relationships. And I experienced that in my polygamous relationship, of really expanding through my jealousy and possessiveness issues and my need to control another person. And so I landed with a really, you know, evolved group of friends in Salt Lake. And, you know, that's kind of my experience. And also my experiences at the Bellagio, where I became...
Bellagio, that's
in
Las
Vegas,
Vegas, right?
yeah. Yeah, I became one of the lead therapists in the Bellagio, and I learned Watsu through my experience at the Bellagio.
That's the experience I had here with you, right?
Yes, yes.
Would you call it aqua dance?
I call it aqua dance. I renamed it because it's a little, you know, I've kind of evolved.
It's indescribable. As I was going through it, I remember just relaxing into it and feeling, I don't know, like I was swimming in the water, like just in a way that I've never felt before.
Yes.
Do people do a series of these?
They can. I recommend it. It really takes you back sometimes into the mother's womb. It can take you back that far because you're in warm water, the same temperature as the womb. And you're cradled. A lot of it is cradling. You like when you were a child, so you can feel safe. You can feel safe to release, you know, a lot of the impact that our body, mind, and spirit has had through this lifetime that we've been here. And
it almost felt like a womb-like, or, you know, a way primitive experience.
Yeah, it does some deep releasing, as well as I do a lot of deep cranial sacral work and spinal adjustments.
So there you are at the Bellagio. See, I took you off.
It's all right.
It's okay.
You're good.
But as you can see, a woman of many facets, like a diamond or a ruby. You know, the fact is, no, but you know, that's the thing I think we find about people, isn't it? That if we make a judgment, we put them in a box.
Yes.
But if we just relax and be observant and interact gently, colors and sparkles come off. There's so much more to our life than when we rush through it and don't take the time to look and share. So I hope that's what we're doing. So here we are. Going back, we're past the first two books.
Yes.
And now we're at the Bellagio. So all this, you did training and obviously all kinds of things to be now one of the lead therapists at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, doing Watsu, aqua dance. Yes. This is on Maui, so this is available now.
It is.
You still
It
do
is.
This, right?
Absolutely,
so,
yes.
So my experience was one of, hopefully many of you will get to enjoy this experience. We'll put numbers and stuff up. You'll have no problem finding it. So here we are, back in the Bellagio, and you've now evolved to this independent therapist. Were you still in the polyamorous relationship or no?
No, I actually had left that, and I remarried actually pretty soon afterwards to Brad Bird, and I became Janae Thornbird, which is what a lot of my books are under that authorship, Janae Thornbird. And I wrote another book which is called Becoming One, The Journey Towards God. And actually, I wrote it twice. I did a rewrite on it because I had written that when I was actually in a polygamous relationship, because I was getting a lot of downloads from God. I actually was going to name that book Conversations with God, like I told you. Then I heard about Neil Donald Walsh. And I'm like, wow, he already stole my title. So, shucks. So I had to rename it. And so, that name came to me, Becoming One, The Journey Toward God. And it really was, I was looking at all the religions at that time and seeing the consistencies. I was seeing the similarities rather than the differences. And I realized that there was a few things they all had in common. And one was the idea that we're all one. We're all one in spirit. And some of them talked about this activation of our divine self that reconnects us with our memory of being one and being one with God. And so it really started me on a journey to find answers on some of these practices that would activate what I learned later to be Kundalini in the Eastern Tantric religion.
We're now I'm sort of looking timeline-wise. Are we at the Bellagio? This is all sort of building up?
It is. Actually, when I went to take my Watsu training, I got a lot, you know how you connect the dots and you get these aha moments?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was when I was at Harbin and studying this Watsu training. And
Harbin Hot Springs.
Harbin Hot Springs. And they did a lot of Tantra there. I learned a lot of Tantra at Harbin. And Harold Dole, who was the one who founded and invented Watsu, was a Zen Shiatsu master. And I realized that the real underlying purpose of the Watsu was to activate Kundalini energy. And I know Kundalini is such a mystical name, and my first husband thought, I got a big Kundalini, and I'm like, no. It has nothing to do with sex. Kundalini.
So those of you who are Christians who have never gotten outside the box of words, Kundalini, I'm going to give you my quick definition, let me hear yours.
Yes.
Is a flow of energy that goes through your body, focused on in my mind, in the spine area, that goes through different points that together, a rainbow of colors, or these different points that have different energetic and tied to all kinds of different aspects of life. So when you awaken your Kundalini, it's like being more awakened to the possibilities of life. I don't know if
that's a great definition, absolutely.
But people think sex. That's what all people think of.
And I don't know why, because, sex involves the second chakra. And, we'll just talk briefly about chakras. They're energy centers of the body. And we have 7 that are noted. We do have others that are in etheric state. But the 7 physical chakras, are the base to the crown chakra, and you can go and research that on your own. But it basically is, we are a rainbow of color, and to have a full awakening Kundalini is to activate and balance all of the chakras in the chakra system so that they integrate and they start to vibrate, or they actually spiral, as I had this Kundalini awakening. And it spirals slowly at the base, and then it actually gets faster and faster until it's just spinning up through the crown, and you actually see these bright lights when you have this activation. It's an amazing experience. I invite all of you to.
I'm breaking in again because I'm going back to my wants to experience that spiral feeling. I know I was going around in the water with you, but I could feel my energy building. So when I was feeling like I was going on the road to Hana, except 10 times faster, that's what was happening. I felt like
it can make you dizzy. It can definitely, because it's really opening up a lot of receptor sites in the brain, and I warned you about that.
Well, I felt good because it meant to me that I was open to the experience, that I was available to the experience that was happening, and I look forward to doing more. And
there's no guarantees that doing a Watsu is going to do it. Actually, I'm just going to go back a minute in time, because I thought I was going to get this great Kundalini awakening through my yoga practice and my transcendental meditation, and I was vigilant about it. I was a disciple. I was a yoga practitioner and a yogi. And I practiced yoga religiously for probably 20 years. And then I met this shaman named Patrick Quirk, or Speaking Wind. His Native American name was Speaking Wind. And we had this amazing encounter. I mean, it was divinely inspired. There's no doubt about it. It was divinely orchestrated. And so I met Patrick, and I read his first book. This is one of his books, and I don't know if you can zoom in on that, but
being that we have no camera guy, we ain't zooming. But here's a picture of Patrick.
Yes.
Patrick Quirk, The Message, Speaking Wind. Okay.
And I actually read his first volume, which I don't have with me, but it was called When Spirits Touch the Red Path, and I was very, very interested in Native American folklore, because growing up Mormon, we were taught that the Book of Mormon was the history of the Native Americans, and that again is a long story, but my family was very they wanted to assist the Native Americans with some of the financial needs, and so I got really entrained in the Native American lifestyle, and actually lived in a teepee at one time and learned a lot of the Native American arts and crafts. So I was very what can I say, very interested and attracted to the Native American spiritual traditions. So when I met Patrick and I'd read his book, When Spirits Touch the Red Path, he talked about this experience of becoming spiritually one. And it was very intriguing as he described it in his book, because I was actually writing a book that talked about how we were all spiritually one in our pre-existence or in the spirit world, and that we do have this incredible intimacy or oneness that we can experience, and I believe that we can experience that in this life. And I knew that Patrick had some of those answers for me, and so I met him when he was doing a conference in Linden, Utah, and met him, and it was it was just a life-changing experience with Patrick. But and a lot of that's in my books. But to make a long story short, is he actually did what's called Shaktiput, which is somebody else that has their Kundalini awakened can actually awaken somebody else's Kundalini. And what was so interesting about it is he was actually in Alabama, and I was in Salt Lake City, Utah when this occurred, when this activation happened. So that's how powerful the spirit world is. And I learned so much from Patrick. He was the real deal. He was the real kind of shaman. I mean, he could remote view like no other I've ever seen, which, remote viewing is that you can see past and future, and, you can spirit journey, which is what true shamans can do. And so it was an incredible experience when he activated my Kundalini. It was like I understood what was going on. I understood that the spinning was my chakras activating and awakening and moving up through my chakra system and out through my head. And then let's go back to, so when I was at Harbin Hot Springs and doing my Watsu training, I recognized that this was, during my stay at the Bellagio. I recognized
that
there was...
Did you notice that sound movement outside as the things were talking? It got louder and boomier. So you were at Harbin and you recognized.
Well, I was recognizing that there were certain techniques, especially therapeutic or, body work techniques that help to get the body, let's say, prepared for an activation. And part of the body work that I was doing at the time was massage, which is, I call it, hands-on healing.
Do you guys know what an activation is? Give us a definition.
An activation.
Preparing for an activation.
Well, our Kundalini energy actually lies dormant in kind of this bowl, the perineal bowl, physically. And
right?
and so mystics teach that we can prepare for an activation by doing yoga. Yoga is a great way to prepare the bodies for this activation, and also meditation is great, TM, transcendental meditation, as well as certain types of body work really releases some of the restrictions in the body that prevent our full experience of energy activation. And it's all about energy. Our bodies are simply a vehicle of energy. And so we all can have this experience. It's not just for the mystics, it's not just for the yogis, it's not just for the Gnostics. So I do want to talk about Gnostics because that really takes me back to Mormon roots.
Gnostic, Gnostic, Gnostic. Okay.
Yes, Gnostic.
I'm just giving you guys a little bit of, roadmap, because as you can see, this experience is so complex and woven, and yet here we are. Like I said, we came to a very similar place from two different places in ways.
Absolutely.
Which is
really what the Holy Vortex.
The whole thing is about.
The Holy Vortex is bringing all of those paths of our spiritual and religious paths.
We know what holy is. Holy means special and revered, right?
Or it can mean whole, wholesome, healed. Holy it comes actually
and
from
vortex,
the Greek word kalos. Holy comes from beautiful, or it means whole and complete.
Okay.
So holy means complete, whole. And vortex, I don't know if you've read any of the Abraham translation or what do you call them?
Transcriptions.
Yeah, from Esther and Jerry Hicks.
And Jerry Hicks.
They wrote a great book called The Vortex. And, the vortex is really, a Kundalini is a vortexing of energy, and the Holy Vortex, I would call a Kundalini awakening a
Would you
holy
call a
vortex.
Vortex is sort of like a doorway?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So
it's a energy.
It's a doorway to exploration of, in your portrayal, the rainbow, the 7 chakras.
Yes, absolutely.
Is it interesting that I'm working with companies called Rainbow? Right? That's what I'm saying. We're talking about the Rainbow Temple, which I've been talking about for 20 years.
Yes.
And here you are coming from a whole different place.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. And those drawings that you showed, wait till you look at the Holy VortexFoundation.net website.
Right.
You'll see that the core of ideas and how they work together. I am very excited about that. That from totally different places we can come to the same idea.
Absolutely.
Like I said, idea. Steven Spielberg, if you're out there, come on in. This is one of those, we're all building the same mountain. We're all hearing those same few notes.
We are.
We're coming here from all different ways to this.
To the Holy Vortex.
This Holy Vortex.
Yes, because it's embracing all of the rainbow colors. It's because we all, are transmitting a different color. And, we can call them races or religions, beliefs. But, we all emit a certain vibration or color. And when we activate our Holy Vortex, it becomes white light, and white light contains it all. You know, white light contains all of the colors, and that's really what we're coming to. I really believe that this is the paradigm that we are entering into, is the oneness. We call it the oneness. I mean, the Native Americans, they're so simplistic. They just call it the oneness, which was basically what Patrick called what I experienced as Kundalini awakening, and what the Gnostics. So let's go back to Gnostic. Now, Gnostic, as opposed to agnostic means to not know. And some people say I'm an agnostic because I don't know God directly. Gnostics believe they could have a direct experience with God. And they would actually, if you go back to some of the Nag Hammadi scriptures that are Gnostic scriptures, you will find that they did this ordinance where they would take people out in water, and they would do this called baptism. They would take them out and activate their gnosis. Well, you know, it was like I was trying to connect all the dots, you know. Well, maybe that's what they were doing out here in Harbin, doing this Watsu practices. They were activating gnosis. Well, this is an ancient tradition. This is what the primitive church, the primitive Christians would do. And once they activated their gnosis, you know, that's all they needed. You know, they were connected to God. They didn't need anybody else. They didn't need
that was
John the
Baptist, right?
Yes, yes.
He found
absolutely.
a spot in the river, and that's what he did.
Absolutely. He may have activated Jesus's gnosis. And that's when, you know, the white dove came down.
How does that make you Christians feel? I hope it makes you feel suddenly freed. That there's more information out there that puts all of what is in the core of your belief and gives you more understanding. And, you know, I don't know where's the word Kundalini? Is that Hindu?
I think it's a Hindu. I think it's Sanskrit.
So you see a Sanskrit Hindu word in the middle of Gnostic, which is American Indian and Native.
No, Gnostic is a primitive church word. That is a primitive Christian word.
So look at that. I mean, and look how that ties together. So isn't that exciting?
It is exciting.
Rainbow and the Kundalini energy, that's Hindu, and all these different religions have these ideas. They all circle around and call it different things. Isn't that great to realize? That we're all one. We're all seeing the same vision.
Well, we're all saying the same thing. We're basically telling the same story. We're just using different words and different concepts. You know, it's a concept that is pervasive in every culture and every religion and every spiritual practice. And so, you know, if we let go of all the terms and meanings and labels that we've labeled this to be this certain, and then we have to do all of these practices and we have to do all these rituals around this in order to achieve this, you know. And I think every religion was started because somebody had this amazing awakened experience and they wanted to replicate that and have everybody have that, which is what I wanted. I wanted to replicate my experience for you, because it was so incredibly mind-changing.
Yeah.
It was life-changing. And so, you know, all religions, the Christians, you know, they wanted to activate people's gnosis, so they took people out into the water and activated it. And then they wanted to own that experience, so that they created these mystery schools, and they created a religion around that. And then they created politics around giving certain people the right to have that experience or information for that experience. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the reason I was ready to jump in is when you talked about the Christians and the gnosis, it just came to me. I think it's important for the Jews to know there were no Christians at the time. These were, I'm sure, John the Baptist. What was he? Was he Jewish?
I'm sure he was.
Jewish. Jesus was Jewish. So you see how it all ties together? We're all trying to find the differences and separations instead of find what we agree on, how we can cooperate. Mm-hmm. Community. Give me that little sign, that thing you said again.
Coming into unity by living in community. And community, and just take that word and break it down. Commune or communion. You know, so many religions have all of these rites or communion practices. You know, the Native Americans brought the peace pipe, the white buffalo woman brought the peace pipe, as a type of communion celebration. She used that as a tool of communion. And all of the treaties in the native, with the white man were done on this communion practice of smoking the peace pipe. And she was a powerful messenger to the Native Americans. And that's, of course, that will bring me to the next book, White Buffalo Woman. White Buffalo Woman. But, and yet we use these tools like tobacco instead of as a tool of communion, of bringing people into unity or coming into union. We actually use them as addictive drugs, And same with Jesus, like he brought the wine and the sacrament as a form of communion, and so the wine was used as a means to come into union. And the Catholics still use that practice of communion. And, the Hindus and all these, they will use different herbs to bring them into higher states. And, they can call them entheogens, which means God within. But what's happened is we've taken these entheogens and we've kind of abused them and have made them the path to our awakening. And so, I just caution people when they are doing sacred ceremony and using these strong entheogens that they, at least seal their circle and make it sacred and make the objective to come into community or communion with those substances. So.
Some of you guys don't know what seal this circle means, but that's where you're going to go and enjoy, and your books must be filled with lots of ritual.
Absolutely.
And lots of explanation of I guess
practices. Yes, I do. Becoming One is definitely a guidebook to do some of these practices that we actually incorporate truth on all of our intellectual, our physical, and our spiritual bodies. And one of the first chapters, which is in Becoming One, is how we can gain our own integrity, which is actually incorporating, which incorporate means to embody truth on all of those levels. And so really the objective in our life is to find correct principles and to live those correct principles, and then you gain what I call celestial integrity. And it's, it's valuable for health, for instance, that we are in our own integrity. So that's...
Let me ask you a question. I know I'm hearing this as a two-part show. You probably also, if not more, because now we've gotten a little bit of exploration into who you are, and I think that we could talk about each of these areas, and probably that would be a good idea to have Jessie. How did you get the name Jessie, or is that a whole other story here?
We can talk about how I got the name Jessie. We'll have to go into some interesting experiences that I had back in Utah. I actually established 4 healing centers in Utah. One was Living Stream, which is in Logan, Utah, and then I had a Heart Song Healing Center in St. George, Utah, and then I had a Higher Ground in Draper, and then I established a fabulous healing center in Holiday called Heart Song Healing Center, and I actually built an above-ground Watsu pool that was absolutely beautiful. It was in one of these older mansions, and I had a bunch of therapists working for me, and it was very high-end. I had modeled it after the Bellagio and Harbin. And Harbin was a clothing optional spiritual retreat, so I really wanted to incorporate some of the tantric and gnostic and shamanic practices. And so I established myself as a church there in Holiday from my vision quest that I did, and I called it the Church of the Gathering of What is Real. And I know that sounds like a really corny name, I don't know, but that's what I got on top of the mountain in my vision quest, that we have this misnomer that it's the gathering of these tribes of Israel, but the gathering is people that really see what is real. It's right here, right now, what we're experiencing, the love that we share between us, the energy that we share between us. And that's really what this idea of the gathering of what is real, and that we see the truth, that we actually are willing to open our eyes and see the truth.
Are you 114? Or, you have so much life packed into you here. You guys are going to be sitting and reading a lot, but I think you're going to need to get in touch with this young lady to be able to find out more about Watsu, about aquatic dance, and to understand this Holy Vortex Foundation. And we're going to do another show, I hope we will, about how the Holy Vortex Foundation and the Dreammakers Foundation really are similarly linked, and a chain of these. I see you wearing a six-sided.
Yes, it's a rainbow, actually hexagon, which is it's a rainbow quartz, and yeah, I was given to that by a friend of mine. I was actually doing
When I think
class.
of hexagon, I think of, I don't know, I think of the Jewish star, which is funny.
Star of David. Yes, it's a very powerful sacred geometry.
And it's in many different religions and all over. I'm sure that I don't know why I always look out there and I'm thinking there are lots of Christians, maybe because I'm here in America, that I hope will jump for joy. That there are people out there, they want everyone to believe in Jesus, in the life of Jesus. And here we are, there are people that are living things that can help make that life real and relative to many more people than you thought you had to convert someone. You just have to open up and be aware of these different energy centers. Absolutely. And let that information in and embrace it. I don't think we could have war if we
Absolutely.
keep it this.
If we look at the similarities rather than our differences. And, in my book, Becoming One, I talk about the Tree of Life, which is part of the Jewish tradition. And it's a beautiful mystical tradition of the Tree of Life, or the Sephirah. And it even models the chakra system quite well. It is in alignment with the chakra system. So I do take all of the religions in my book, Becoming One, The Journey Toward God, and I do comparatives and say, look, we're really talking about the same thing. We're just using different language. We're just using a different way of explaining things and a different model.
Some of us here on Maui, some of you are on Maui, in fact, come on down. But we on Maui are very fortunate to have people like Jessie, who hasn't told us where she got that name yet, but because we have don't we have an extraordinary island? Something attracted you to here.
Oh my God, it's magical. I'll tell you, you will have manifestations of the divine every day. You will just put out what you want and it will just come to you. I mean, it's just almost immediately here in Maui. And I think it's just because it's such a mother energy here. There's just such a nurturing mother, magical, mystical energy that's why I'm here. I love Maui. And so, do I have a little bit of time to talk about?
You can take
So back to, so I established my church there in Holiday, Utah, and I was incorporating some of the Gnostic and Tantric practices that I had learned at Harbin, and unfortunately, the Mormon community didn't appreciate my spreading my gospel to the people there in Holiday, and they decided to do a sting operation after I went public about after I went public about my naturist ideas and practices, because Watsu is normally done or traditionally done in the nude, and that's how I learned it at Harbin. And so I had a very private pool, and I was doing some of my practices nude. And I am a naturist, and I believe that nudity is kind of a metaphor for just showing up authentic. And so they got wind of it, and I had the whole vice squad in there, and I got arrested. And they hauled me off to jail. And so I fought the system. I stood up for my constitutional rights, my First Amendment rights for being able to practice my religion, which incorporated, these practices of shamanic and Gnostic and tantric practices. And so I've been fighting the Utah court system since it happened in January of 2011. Eventually, because I would not back down, I would not take a plea bargain, and I realized that all of my court-appointed attorneys were being withdrawn. Every time they would try to file a motion to dismiss, they would get withdrawn, and I was becoming very suspicious about it. And finally, I fired all of them and went pro se and filed some filings, my own motion to dismiss on so many variables, so many grounds for dismissal. I mean, it was phenomenal that they even were pursuing it anymore. And after I fired all my attorneys, went pro se, and filed these motions, the judge threw me in jail for no reason. And I spent 28 days in jail because I would not back down on my right to practice my religion. And so
you mean because you were doing your practice in the nude?
Yes.
That was this 28 days in jail?
Yes. And I have never, they never found me guilty of anything. She just wanted to strong arm me into pleading out. And, I kind of was getting their game plan. And so while I was in there, I was in jail. I didn't know what to do. I'd never done anything I felt in my life wrong. I followed all the, traffic, laws, everything. And so after 3 days of fasting, I thought I was going to be like Gandhi or Thoreau, and I was going to fast my way out. And then on the third day, I had this impression, and I'm a big Wayne Dyer fan. I love Wayne. He's one of my practitioners, and here on island, this saying that he says all the time came to mind. It says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So I wow, it was kind of like a little message, this little aha in my mind. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm looking at this differently. Maybe this is just a great opportunity for me.
A quiet space I can use in a positive way.
Absolutely.
So what did you do?
So I wrote a book. And I did. I'm a writer. In fact, I was thinking it was time for me to write a new book.
What was the name of the book?
It's called White Buffalo Woman.
White Buffalo Woman.
Yes, White Buffalo Woman.
Who was the author?
Well, it was during that time I felt like a feminine emissary of Jesus Christ. I felt that I was thrown in jail, had the same types of experiences that my Master Jesus had gone through. And I felt so akin to him, and being a minister there in the depths of jail and the depths of hell, really. And I had some great awakenings. Actually, I spent 11/11/11 in jail. So, those were significant numbers.
I passed out and hit a tree on 11/11/11.
I had a powerful, powerful experience on 11/11, but you'll have to read my book to find out about that powerful experience.
So you were in jail and then you were writing your book.
I was writing my book. I had to use these golf pencils. I had to use golf pencils that were this big, and this is just a pad of paper I got in jail, and I went through like 2 pads of paper, and I just write every day. And it wasn't really just about my experiences. It was really documenting a lot of the experiences of the women that were in jail.
So here came the name, because I'm still looking for a writer.
Yes.
See, I'm doing this.
So then I just had this grand awakening that I needed to change my name, because I had such a change of heart. And so I decided to take on the feminine component of Jesus Christ and call myself Jessie Christian.
Now Jessie Christian wrote White Buffalo Woman.
Yes.
So,
and also, because I'm kind of a little bit of a renegade right now. I'm, to tell you the truth, I'm on the lam. I still have to fight my court battle in Utah. I actually, after being released, I had to withdraw all of my filings, my paperwork, in order for me to get released. It was kind of a blackmail thing.
Wow.
And then they tried to force me into jury trial in the next few months, and they would not let me bring any witnesses, and they would not let me defend myself on any constitutional principles. I could not bring the Constitution
This
into
was the state
jury
of
trial.
Utah,
This
right?
was the state of Utah.
This is the same state of Utah that's there now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
State of Utah, we'd like to hear your feelings about this. Where is it appropriate to do that? I think I'd like to hear from a lot of people about that. Continue.
Yes. So they were going to force me into a jury trial. I didn't get to pick any of my jurors. And they forced me to have an attorney who I knew had been bought, because I told him I didn't feel I could get fair trial in that jurisdiction in the state of Utah, because they had already shown that I was being prejudiced against because of my religion. So I walked away. I just said, I can't do this. I know what their game plan was, and so the day before I was to go to trial, and the judge ruled that I could not bring any constitutional arguments or witnesses. I had a list of like 5 professional witnesses. I had a doctor that did Tantra that was going to go to witness. I had James Mooney, who established the Aloha Native American Church, who was on my side. He was going to back me up all the way. I had a whole list of witnesses.
You were blocked from your right to defend yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we're happy to have you here.
It's good to be here, actually. I love Utah. That's where my peeps are. I call them my peeps because my family's there. I got most of my children that are still in Utah. And I have a warrant out for my arrest because I would refuse to go to my jury trials. So, and that's another reason I've changed my name. So
if there are any other attorneys out here who would like to be helpful in this, I hope that you'll feel free to get in touch with me or with Jesse direct.
Yes. And a little note too. They did the same thing in Arizona to a very, very dear friend of mine, Tracy Elise, and she had a beautiful goddess temple, the Phoenix Goddess Temple, and they actually arrested her and 32 goddesses that same year in September of 2011, and they actually filed felony charges against Tracy and her goddesses. For syndicated crime, for running a syndicated crime circuit, even though they were practicing
You
what
say
they
goddesses.
believed.
What were they doing?
They were doing Tantra work. Tantra has kind of gotten a bad name over the years because we consider Tantra as sexual healing or, having a sexual experience. And, I believe that people should have whatever they experience they want between consenting adults, and so I support Tracy in what she was doing. In other words, at the Phoenix Goddess Temple, and yet she was charged with prostitution, racketeering, syndicated crime, all these horrendous crimes, and all she in her heart of hearts was practicing was Tantra, which is to weave with all of the chakras, which includes a sexual chakra, which includes the second chakra, because we are a rainbow color of light, and if we eliminate sexuality, do we have a rainbow?
That's what I was talking about earlier when I'm talking about our society is focused on second dynamic, on that sexual thing, instead of a bigger picture.
Well,
so
I always
what happened with that? Is that still ongoing?
Yes. I was actually down there with Tracy in September, this past September, and she was continuing to practice. She was actually on house arrest, and she had to wear one of those monitors on her ankle, and she's having a lot of health problems because of it. And she'd been on house arrest for 15 months. Waiting trial, and they were just really pressuring her to plea out, and she was going to stand firm. She wanted to take it all the way to a jury trial, and I was supporting her in every aspect. And she did go to court one time when I was there, And that judge ruled that she could bring in constitutional arguments, that she was able to bring into her case the constitutional argument of,
I applaud that judge.
of First
I
Amendment
can't believe
rights.
the state of Utah wouldn't let you bring arguments.
Yes. And so that was a huge step in the direction of, for my case to be retrialed there. Actually, I've actually filed a civil lawsuit against the state of Utah. So I'm waiting to hear back from the state of Utah because I filed a huge filing.
She says she's a fugitive, but they're in communication.
Yeah,
Very
I did.
funny story.
I did. I filed a civil lawsuit. It's in the federal and Supreme Court of the United States.
Now, all this stuff has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about the next time we get together. Because I want to show you.
But let me just finish with Tracy. So while I was down there, she actually got charged again and put in jail. And she's in jail right now. And I want everybody who's hearing this to pray for Tracy.
This is the beginning of March 2013.
Yes. And she got put in jail again with a $250,000 cash-only bond on her head.
Now what?
She can't get out until
What
somebody
for?
puts up $250,000 cash for practicing Tantra. For practicing Tantra. For claiming her right to practice what she believes in her heart is a true religion. Which is...
It's such an in-depth problem we have here, and how our whole society has created this thing that... and I was going to put out my opinion. You obviously can tell my opinion. I think our society needs to adjust its view of what does community mean, and what is freedom, and what choices do we have of our own life itself. Are we going to dictate that people can only do this or that? You know, our society is changing in lots of ways, and somehow people like to enforce their way as the only way. I would really like to think that more of us will understand that if we work on our own temple in our way, that is a lifetime experience by itself. Why we have to force people into different things in different ways, I really don't know and appreciate. I sure hope we grow past that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So here
I'm just inviting,
those are amazing years. Inviting people to give her support. Right?
Yes, I'm inviting people to give Tracy some support.
How can they do that?
Well, if you go onto my website, Holy Vortex Foundation, and you do want to donate to the Holy Vortex Foundation, half of that is going towards a legal defense fund for people like Tracy, like me, that are defending their rights to practice their religion.
I see. So that's something that is what's the word? Totally separate and apart from what we're doing here at TV.
Yes.
This is, if you look into this, a lot of people, when we see things on this show, they bring up all kinds of stuff. The only reason I'm identifying a separation is we're not pitching for your money.
No.
We're talking about different, here, look at this situation here with a legal defense fund needed for somebody who's $250,000 cash bond.
Yeah. Well, we're not trying to get the bond. We're just actually trying to get a decent attorney for Tracy. She can't afford an attorney. She's got a court-appointed attorney who is really jacking her up. I mean, he's really not on her team. We decided after seeing, the history of what she's been having to go through. And it's the same as what I experienced, that, the court-appointed attorneys are working for the court. And so they have to support, the court energy of what they're, the movement that they're moving into. So.
We've covered a lot of ground here today, a lot of different stuff. But all of it is your life. And here you are now. And there's a lot, I know that you guys are going to probably want to listen to this again and again to get so much out of it, because you've really expressed a lot of truths. And I think people can feel a lot more comfortable and closer to concepts that you've brought forth. You've been a very good spokesperson. Wouldn't you agree? I bet you would.
Mm-hmm.
We want to hear your comments and things, please. Will you come back and talk with me? I want to talk to you about
Absolutely.
this.
I want to get more into really the community aspect of what the Holy Vortex is, and really it is about establishing and networking intentional communities, and also sovereignty is an important issue, and that could be we could have a whole segment on sovereignty issues, and that we really do need to gain back our sovereignty,
personal sovereignty,
our God-given
ability
rights
to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So you can see how we came together. We came together with an intentional community. That's what happened. The picture that I saw from your website triggered in me a picture of a building in Maui that I had envisioned, another building and a thing, and suddenly I looked at this picture and I went, wow, look at that. And then I looked at your other picture. You'll see a picture on there about the different chakras and the accompanying rooms.
The Rainbow Light Center is really what
And we were talking about the Rainbow Temple. I have a picture of 1980.
That's great.
With multi-levels and all kinds of things of a way of building an education and living community.
Absolutely.
So that's what's really fun. And I think that we're very fortunate we're on Maui where this possibility not only exists.
Absolutely. I think it's right on the groundbreaking surgeons right now. It
So
really
we want all of you out there to know, and we want you involved with us.
Absolutely.
And we are in us.
Yes.
And the Dream Makers Foundation isn't just Jason, you see, it's an us. And the Holy Vortex Foundation isn't just Jesse Christian, it's an us.
Absolutely.
This is our chance to be community.
Mm-hmm.
This is our chance to grow. There are many other chances and people doing this, but that's what I want to talk about too. But I thought it was important to go through a lot of this. To number one, I wanted to let people know that you do this watsu, this aqua dance right here. So that would be a really good entrance into this whole thing, and you'd really enjoy seeing some of these books and meeting a wonderful lady who has really a warm and loving spirit, and I think it's a really good thing, and that's why I thought you should be on our show. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here with me. I hope you'll soon be back with me.
I appreciate it. Absolutely. Yeah, you've got my number. You call me up. I'd love to do it. I love to share my stories. I really do. I feel like everybody has a message, and we're all messengers.
Do you have an easy email for people to send something?
I do, yes. It's heatsongjbird@gmail.com.
heatsongjbird at
Gmail.
At Gmail. Boy, Gmail's popular.
It's easy. It's easy.
Yeah. Okay, and we're going to see it here on the screen. Watch. And you'll see all kinds of stuff. You know, I have appreciated this time. And I know we've been a little run on, and we've been jumping subjects and stuff, but there are a lot of people out there that now will look closer at who you are. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we'll give you a warm reception here. Thank you for joining our community.
Oh, I appreciate it, Jason. I really do. I think, when we work together for one purpose, there is so much power. It's exponential. And when two people come with a vision, it has to come into being. God's behind it. I really do. I believe that. And it's been a vision, a joint vision, it sounds like, for many, many years for both of us to bring this into fruition.
And Steven Spielberg, I'm picking on you only because you saw that we all have this years ago. Many of us have. But you made a movie about it. We welcome you to our community.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And everybody else.
And everybody
that
else.
wants to join community.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Aloha.
Aloha.